I'm Samantha Carter, 32, a real estate developer with a $630,000 condo, a scar beneath my hairline, and a family that once tried to erase me in marble and silence. They said I was stubborn, but I built that condo from broken dreams and unopened wounds. Outside my window, Boston glittered like a promise it never kept, cold and shining. I sat cross-legged on the floor, surrounded by old contracts, dusty photographs, and the smell of paper that remembered more than people ever did. It was supposed to be just another birthday ritual. A little organizing, a little pretending I was fine. Then I found her letter. For when she's ready. Grandma Ruth's handwriting, uneven, familiar, the kind of scrawl that stitched truth into every stroke. I opened it, and in that moment something cracked. Something I'd kept buried under years of being the forgotten daughter, the one left off the guest list, the one who never got her side of the story told. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just read it again and again, like it could rewrite history. And maybe it could. If you've ever been told to smile while they erased you, if you've ever walked into a room and felt like furniture instead of family, stay. This story is yours too. And I promise, it's just getting started. This year, I found something, tucked beneath a photo of me and Grandma Ruth. Her knuckles curled around mine like I was the last thing she wanted to hold on to, was an envelope. Yellowed at the edges, unopened, unaddressed, except for the scrawl I'd recognize anywhere. For when she's ready. My breath caught. I sank into the couch, thumbing the flap open with reverence, guilt, and a strange sense of inevitability. Inside, Grandma's cursive spilled across the page like silk unraveling. Samantha, if you're reading this, then something inside you has changed. You've stopped believing their version of the story. That's good. I set something aside for you. One day, it will protect you when I no longer can. I read the paragraph 5 times. My hands were trembling, but my face stayed still, like it had trained itself not to react. Years of being the forgotten daughter had done that, taught me to absorb without breaking. The heating unit kicked on with a soft thud. I folded the letter carefully, placing it back in the envelope. Grandma was always cryptic, but this felt deliberate, strategic. I glanced at the photo frame. Was she pointing me toward something? Was there more I hadn't found? I pulled the safe toward me again, emptied its contents. Old contracts, college records, my first commission check. Nothing unusual. But something about that letter. It rattled in my brain like a puzzle with missing pieces. A sharp knock on the door jolted me. Ethan leaned against the frame, his tie loosened, face half buried in the collar of his coat. "You're not asleep," he observed, stepping inside. "Not even close," I muttered. He dropped onto the couch beside me, eyes scanning the chaos of paperwork. "Did someone die?" I held up the letter. "Grandma, again." His brow furrowed. I explained quickly, watching his face shift from curiosity to concern. "You think she meant an actual trust? Legal protection?" "I don't know," I admitted, "but it doesn't feel like metaphor." We sat in silence, the low hum of the city filtering through my balcony doors. Then my phone buzzed on the table, screen lighting up with a familiar name, Elaine Carter. "Speak of the devil," Ethan muttered. I hesitated, then let it ring out. A moment later, a second notification popped up. Email. I opened it and blinked. Subject: Brandon's 30th. You're invited. Message: Sam, family matters more than pride. Come home, one night only. Mom attached was a PDF invite, tastefully designed, filled with gold fonts and photos of Brandon smiling like he owned the world. I hadn't seen him in almost 2 years. "You're not seriously considering it," Ethan said, voice sharp. I didn't answer. My eyes lingered on the line. Family matters more than pride. It sounded like a dare, a bait. "They're not inviting you," he added. "They're summoning you, That made me laugh. Just a breath of it, but real. Ethan knew them almost as well as I did, and he'd seen the scars they left behind. Still, something in me stirred. Maybe it was Grandma's voice echoing in the letter. Don't cling to what never loved you back. But maybe I wasn't going back for them. Maybe I was going back for me. I took a deep breath. I'm going, but not empty-handed this time. My mother smiled for the camera, the same smile she wore the day she left me at a hospital and blamed my choices. I stepped onto the marble entryway of the Carter estate, heels silent against polished stone, the scent of lavender polish and simmering lamb already cloying. A string quartet played something light and expensive in the background. I adjusted the hem of my navy dress and reminded myself, you came for answers, not absolution. The air was chilled but still suffocating. Elaine approached first, wine glass in hand, red lipstick precise, posture sharp enough to slice concrete. Her arms opened like she meant it. She did not. There's my beautiful girl, she cooed. I froze for a breath before allowing the briefest contact. Her perfume was suffused with something I couldn't name. Nostalgia or manipulation. You've blossomed, Samantha, she said, her hand lingering on my shoulder. Boston must be treating you well. Thomas appeared behind her, stiff in a tailored tuxedo. About time you showed up, he said, smiling like a contract had just been signed. Brandon's been waiting. I followed their glances across the room. Brandon stood near the grand piano, flanked by guests and a woman I didn't recognize. He looked polished, thinner than I remembered, but charming in a way that made people lean in. His eyes flicked toward me, and for the briefest second, his smile faltered. It was the most honest thing I'd seen so far. I heard you've built quite a portfolio, Thomas said, guiding me toward the main room. You always had a mind for numbers. Interesting, I replied, considering you never let me touch any during undergrad. Elaine chuckled too sweetly. Oh, darling, we were just trying to teach you resilience. I scanned the room. People I hadn't seen in years greeted me like I was royalty. Half of them mispronounced my name. Every comment felt scripted. So successful. She's killing it in real estate. I saw her building in Southie. Remarkable. I glanced at Ethan, standing near the bar, jaw tight, watching me closely. He wasn't drinking. My Aunt Valerie slid in beside me, balancing a flute of champagne like it was a weapon. Funny, she whispered. Elaine called me 3 days ago. Asked if I knew how much your condo was worth. I stiffened. She said it so casually, Valerie added, like asking the weather. I forced a smile. Thanks for the warning. You'll need more than that, she muttered before disappearing into the crowd. Brandon caught up with me near the buffet, Stephanie in tow. She was warm-eyed and attentive, her smile genuine. You look well, Sam, Brandon said softly. Better than expected, right? I replied. He didn't laugh, just looked past me as if rehearsing guilt he didn't know how to place. Elaine reappeared just as a violinist struck the opening of Claire de Lune. Her voice was honeyed now, quieter. Let's chat in the kitchen, darling. Thomas followed. I walked ahead of them, heels echoing down the long hallway that used to house my nightmares. The kitchen was spotless, clinical, a place where emotions were meant to be sterilized. We've been thinking, Elaine began, placing her glass on the island. It's time we consolidated the family portfolio. Strength in numbers, you understand. Thomas added, your condo, well, it's the only asset not under the family name. For restructuring purposes, it makes sense to... No, I said flatly. Elaine blinked. I don't think you understand. I understand exactly. I cut in. That condo is my spine. Without it, I'd crawl again. The silence was instant and sharp. Thomas's jaw twitched. Elaine's mouth tensed, but she recovered first. She leaned in, smile gone, eyes icy. Then don't come crying when you're cut off. Again. I didn't hear the bottle shatter, only my own scream, and then silence. The pain didn't register at first. There was just heat, then white, and then the taste of metal. I crumpled against the marble tiles, my knees scraping hard, the sharp clatter of the champagne bottle still echoing in the horrified gasps around us. Blood, mine, pooled on the floor in thick globs that shimmered against the glow of the chandeliers. Elaine stood over me, her hand still clutching the jagged neck of the broken bottle, chest heaving. Her expression wasn't rage. It was contempt. "Maybe now you'll finally listen," she spat. The room had gone silent. The quartet had stopped. Conversations froze. Someone dropped a fork. Even the music from the speakers stuttered into awkward nothing. Valerie was the first to move. She stormed through the crowd and pushed Elaine back with a force that shook the older woman's poise. "Are you out of your mind?" she screamed. Elaine flinched, her eyes darting to the crowd, to the donors, friends, socialites, suddenly aware that something irreversible had just happened. Valerie knelt beside me, pressing a linen napkin to my scalp, her hands trembling. "Sam, stay with me. Just stay." Everything was blurring. I could feel warm liquid sliding behind my ear. I focused on Valerie's face. She was angry, but her touch was gentle, like Grandma's once was. Paramedics arrived minutes later. I was vaguely aware of Ethan shouting at someone, Brandon looking pale and sick as he stood in the corner with Stephanie gripping his arm. They wheeled me out of my childhood home under fluorescent lights and murmured apologies. I heard someone trying to explain to the police that it was just a misunderstanding. They didn't answer. At the hospital, the fluorescent world continued. Sterile, endless. A CT scan, 6 stitches, a mild concussion. I signed something without reading it. Brandon came late that night. He stood by the curtain for a long time before speaking. "She wasn't supposed to. I didn't think it would—" "Save it," I said. He nodded slowly. "I didn't know about the condo or what they were planning." "You didn't ask." He looked at me, guilt naked on his face. Then he left. The next morning, Valerie arrived. This time, she had a folder in her hand. "They played you for years," she said without preamble. But Grandma didn't. She opened the folder and pulled out a stack of notarized documents. "You're the sole trustee of the Carter Family Trust. And guess what's in it?" I stared at her. She smiled grimly. "The house, that damned mansion. Grandma put it in your name. Locked it with legal language so airtight, even Elaine couldn't snake through." My mouth was dry. "Are you sure?" I had my lawyer check it twice. The pieces clicked like a deadbolt snapping into place. The sudden interest in my assets, the fake warmth, the desperation. They thought they owned me, but they were renting. That afternoon, I walked into Lillian Brooks's office, the family's longtime trust attorney. She greeted me with polite surprise, then flicked through a file she'd apparently expected someone else to open long ago. "Everything your aunt said is correct," she said. "You are the sole trustee. The others are beneficiaries. That means you have final say." She reached under the desk, retrieved a sealed envelope with crisp edges. "Your grandmother left this. For you. No one else has read it." I opened it with careful hands. "Sam, if you're holding this, then they've tried to take something from you again. But this time they won't win. I've made sure of it. You hold the power now. Not because you're angry, but because you earned it. Use it well." "Ruth." The paper shook as I folded it. Lillian sat quietly, letting the moment settle. Then I looked her straight in the eyes. "Sell the house," I told the attorney, "even if they live in it." I used to cry in its walls. Now they'll echo back the contracts I signed. The real estate agent adjusted her Hermes scarf, clearly unsettled by the silence that clung to the Carter estate like mildew. Sunlight filtered through the pristine bay windows, dancing over furniture that hadn't moved in decades. Everything was staged, elegant, hollow, like us. Lillian had been direct in her office that morning. "As trustee," she'd said, clicking her pen once before signing the listing documents. "You don't need their permission, just your will." I wielded that will like a blade. We walked through each room as the agent snapped photos. The same kitchen where I once stood barefoot at midnight, waiting for a meal no one thought to make. The study where Father's voice could eviscerate without a single curse word. The staircase where Elaine once grabbed my wrist so hard, the bruise outlived the memory. The dining room still smelled of polish and expectation. I paused under the chandelier, tracing its sharp crystal teeth. $1.2 million is conservative, the agent said. The market here is tight. Sentimental value could drive it higher. I almost laughed. Sentiment. We were halfway through the tour when I heard the creak of the front door. Not from the agent's key, but heavier, louder. Thomas Carter stood in the foyer, arms folded, jaw clenched. "You don't belong here," he said, voice calm in the most menacing way. I didn't flinch. "Neither do you, legally speaking." His eyes narrowed. Then he stepped directly between the agent and the staircase. "She's not taking this house," he growled. "This house is not for sale." I stepped forward until there was just a breath between us. "It already is." The agent, panicking, made some excuse and fled to the car. Thomas didn't move, but his hands trembled. "If you think you're humiliating me," he muttered, "you've underestimated how much I already hate you." I didn't respond. He wasn't worth it. Later that evening, Brandon showed up at my condo. He looked like he hadn't slept. He didn't ask if I was okay. He just held out a weathered notebook with cracked corners. "I found it in the attic," he said. "It was hidden behind Grandma's chest." I opened the cover. It was mine. My handwriting. Crooked, too small for my age. The ink was faded but legible. I flipped through pages filled with fractured memories. School lunches I packed myself. Birthdays I spent alone in my room. The night they forgot to pick me up from choir practice and blamed me for not reminding them. Then one entry froze me. January 4th. Snow all night. I was bad. They said I needed to learn. Locked me out after dinner. I waited on the porch. My toes felt like glass. I didn't cry. I just counted the stars. Brandon's voice was soft, but it cracked. "They didn't forget you. They erased you." I looked up. His face was pale, the diary still open in his hands. "Why didn't you tell me?" he asked. "Would you have believed me?" He didn't answer. He didn't need to. Hours later, after Brandon had gone, quieter than he'd arrived, my phone buzzed. One voicemail. Elaine's voice, thick with venom and desperation. "You'll regret this. This house is ours. Not even death will change that." They came with scripted apologies like business deals. I came with evidence. And a tape recorder. The cafe was too quiet. Polished wooden tables, low jazz in the background, baristas whispering over steaming milk. It was the kind of place where confrontation felt sacrilegious. Perfect. Ethan adjusted the lapel mic under my collar one last time before stepping outside with Jessica, our backup counsel. I kept my palms flat on the table to still their trembling. This wasn't fear. It was control. Compressed, pressurized, and lethal if punctured. Grandma's voice echoed in my head. "Don't argue with liars, just prove they lied." Elaine arrived first, dressed in beige civility. Thomas followed, already scowling, his gait stiff with resentment. Brandon trailed behind them, hands shoved deep into his coat pockets, eyes unreadable. They sat across from me like clients entering hostile negotiations. "Thank you for coming," I said evenly. Elaine smiled, the same glossy one she wore to funerals. "We've been thinking, maybe this has all gone too far. We were just upset." "You assaulted me," I said. "You both gaslit me for decades. You tried to seize my home. This isn't a disagreement. It's a record." Thomas sneered. "Always the dramatics. You've been mentally unstable since college. This paranoia isn't new. Brandon flinched. I pulled a crisp manila folder from my bag and laid it on the table. Inside, a CT scan of my skull, an ER report with blunt force trauma, the 911 transcript Valerie provided, and typed excerpts from my childhood diary. Elaine's smile cracked. I'm giving you an option, I said. You apologize. You retract every false statement. I'll sell the estate and split a portion with you. You walk away with dignity. Thomas leaned in, voice low and biting. You think threatening us with a file and a tantrum makes you powerful? Brandon's chair creaked. I saw the blood, he said, looking at Thomas, then at Elaine. I read the diary. I remember that winter when Sam slept on the porch. I was 5. I didn't understand. But I remember. His voice shook. She's the only sane one here. Elaine turned to him, horrified. You're taking her side now? I'm taking the truth's side, he replied. I reached into my coat pocket and clicked a small remote. A tiny green light blinked. Elaine blinked. What is that? Insurance, I said. Ethan re-entered quietly and took a seat beside me, his phone already syncing the audio file to Jessica's inbox. For court, if it came to that. You'll destroy the family name, Elaine whispered, eyes wide. I looked her dead in the eye. You already did. Thomas slammed his fist on the table. A barista jumped. No one said a word. I leaned forward, placed the CT scan between us, then the diary copy, then the ER report. Finally, the full transcript of every legal threat they'd made, documented, dated, and witnessed. Brandon exhaled slowly, as if something had just broken inside him. Maybe it was the spell. This is your last chance to leave with dignity, I said, or be dragged out by law. I didn't want to watch them leave, but I needed to know it finally ended. The moving trucks pulled up at 7:43 a.m. on a gray Tuesday, unannounced yet fully expected. The front lawn of the Carter estate, once immaculately trimmed, aggressively symmetrical, was now littered with cardboard boxes and hollowed antique furniture. The silence wasn't peaceful. It was surgical. I parked across the street and watched from behind tinted glass. No theatrics, no parting words. Just Elaine, in a crumpled trench coat, barking instructions at a mover who clearly didn't care. Thomas stood on the porch, arms crossed, frozen in a pride he could no longer afford. I didn't wave. I didn't get out. I just sat there until the front door closed behind them for the last time. Sometimes you don't rebuild bridges, Brandon had said a week earlier. You just build better roads. He kept his promise. He'd found a modest apartment near Fenway, was working part-time at a legal clinic, and, miraculously, had cut off the monthly handouts. Later that day, I walked through the front door of my new office downtown. The walls were warm, the light natural. A single photo frame sat on the desk. Ethan and me on a ferry, wind-whipped and laughing, no one watching. My foundation wasn't real estate anymore. It was space, safety, choice. The Valerie visited just after noon. She brought matcha lattes and a crooked smile. You know, she said, glancing around the office, this looks nothing like your old place. It's not meant to, I replied. That evening, under the Charles River Bridge, where Ethan first handed me a scarf on a freezing January night, he proposed. No crowd, no candles, just the two of us and the sound of water nudging stone. The ring was simple. The promise was everything. A week later, I stood before 30 women in a repurposed church basement, palms sweating despite the gentle AC hum. I wasn't good with speeches, but it wasn't about eloquence. I used to think justice was revenge, I told them. But it's not. It's the weight that finally shifts off your chest. It's a name cleared, a story believed, a door slammed shut, and another opened. Someone clapped, then another, and then all of them. Back home, I found a cream envelope wedged beneath my office door. No return address. Just a note on thick paper, handwritten in clean cursive, You inspired me to speak up. My story's next. I stared at it, heart steady, not racing. I didn't know who she was, but I knew what she meant. 2 weeks later, at a larger event, I was signing forms near the back of a hall when a woman stood up in the crowd. Her face was sharp, familiar. Elaine's friend, I realized. She held up a manila folder, hand trembling, voice steady. I have a story, too. The house that once silenced her now stood hollow, emptied not just of furniture, but of power. What began as betrayal ended in clarity. Truth signed its name where silence once reigned. Justice doesn't always arrive loudly. Sometimes it slips in like dawn, reshaping everything it touches. Like a blade forged from pain, truth cut through the legacy of control and left no one untouched.